Welcome to this episode of Safe Home Podcast for struggling teens and their families finding their healing path. I'm Beth Syverson, a mom of an 18-year-old son, Joey, who's been dealing with addiction and mental health issues for several years. I'm walking beside him as he struggles with his recovery while I work on my own personal growth and healing. Today's guests are Dayna Del Val and Mazz Mary, a married couple from North Dakota who are bringing alcoholism out into the light with their podcast, Daily Dose of Dr. Mary and DD. They are here on Safe Home Podcast to talk about how addiction affects everyone, not just the person struggling with addiction. They, like our family, believe that the opposite of addiction is connection, and they are aiming to destigmatize addiction so we can all heal. Welcome to Safe Home, Dayna and Mazz. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having us.
It's nice to be here.
Yes. Well, and it's so great to find people who are open about their struggles with addiction. So many people are closed off about it and don't want to talk about it. And it's even less common, I think, to find a married couple willing to talk about how it affects your relationship. So before we dig into the details of what happened and how it all happened, what motivated you to share your story on the World Wide Web, That's a big step.
I actually think it was because things had been bad for a number of years at our house. And then when Mazz got sober, things got very, very good. And my social media feed went from him being largely absent to suddenly we were traveling back to England to see his family a number of times a year. And we were taking great trips. And we had this really glorious empty nester lifestyle. And people started writing to me and saying, like, what's going on at your house that everything is so great? And I could tell that there was certainly happiness, that my life was happy, but there was also this weird, kind of tinge of criticism. And I thought, oh, people don't understand what we've been through because we were very, very private about it. And we need to reveal the dark so that the light makes sense.
That's really how it came about.
That's awesome. So you're one of those Pinterest families that looked perfect on Facebook and all that, right?
That's a great way to say it, Beth.
We just decided to we kind of decided that people needed to know we actually had a B-side.
Yeah. Okay, good.
It doesn't get shown on Facebook.
I think that's so great because I think everybody has a B-side.
Yes.
And if we just talked about it a little bit more and made it not so shameful or to take the shame away completely, it's nothing to be ashamed about, and just talked about it, I think everyone would be in better shape. I think we'd be getting better services from healthcare and the government. And I think that there'd just be less trauma all around the piece of addiction.
I agree.
Absolutely. Well, Dayna was the driving force because I was coming up on my third year anniversary, my sobriety anniversary. So Dayna asked me if we could just start talking about it. She said, well, how about we launch it on your third year anniversary? And she asked me to think about it. And I did. And I thought, you know what? Why not? Everyone at work knew I was struggling with alcohol. I went into treatment. I kept my job.
Okay, good. What do you do?
Well, I'm a biology professor and chair of the department. So, I kept my job. I didn't have a DUI. If anyone thinks of an alcoholic, it wouldn't be me because, I haven't been arrested, never got a DUI, had a job, we weren't bankrupt.
So you're functioning very well.
Yeah.
Okay. And so everyone at work already knew. So you didn't have to jeopardize your job to go on the internet. That's good.
Yep.
That's good. Well, I love that decision. And our podcast was Joey's decision or original idea. And I just jumped on it because I'm like, yes, other families need to hear this stuff. And so they don't feel so alone.
Yep.
And know that there's resources and, people to talk to and all that good stuff. Well, how long have you been together? How did you meet? He doesn't sound like he's from Fargo, I'm just going to say.
No, so I came to work at NDSU originally, so North Dakota State University. And I lived in an apartment building with a mutual friend of Dayna's. So, this was before Tinder. So we actually were introduced to each other by a mutual friend.
Way, yes.
Yeah, probably the last couple ever to be so, actually. So Peter said to me one night, he said, why aren't you dating anyone? I said, well, this town's full of blondes and I only really like redheads. So he phoned Dayna up and I talked to her on the phone. And then we met a few weeks later and that was it.
Yeah.
Very good.
So that was 2001. So we've been together a really, really long time. Married for 14 of those 20 and a half years.
Wow. Okay. And at what point did alcohol become a problem?
That's a great question, Beth.
Weird thing for me is I went through college, undergrad, my first job after I got my PhD, and I never had a problem with alcohol. Somewhere, in my mid-30s, I started to drink more than I thought I was, and then I didn't even know I was doing it, but I was lying about it. I kept saying, I'm only having one drink. That's fine. But, it's embarrassing now that, being sober for 5.5 years now, so much more about how much trouble I was in, but I didn't even know it, because I was always, I could always justify it. And then I didn't realize I'd actually become an incredibly bad liar. But as one of the symptoms of being an addict, you think you can talk your way out of anything and you just can't. But that's what I started to do. So I think it happened to me slowly. And then I kind of just weirdly gave into it.
Yeah, sure.
Always thinking I'd be fine. It's not really a problem. I'm okay.
It's like putting the frog in the cold water and gradually increasing the heat. The frog doesn't know what's going on. It just is so gradual. You get inured to it and you just keep on going. Did you notice more than Mazz was noticing, Dayna?
Yes, I certainly knew something was really wrong. And I would say, actually, that I can look back and understand that almost as soon as we got married, he was drinking more than I believed he was, certainly more than he told me he was. So, we were married 9 years before he got sober. It wasn't bad for 9 years, but it was bad for,
two or three?
No, it was bad for 5 or 6 of them at least. Yeah.
As I said, you don't think it's as worse as you think.
Yeah,
he was really absent. He was never abusive. He was never mean. He just
wasn't there.
Utterly absent. He kind of lived in the basement, and my son and I kind of lived upstairs, and we occasionally had some really nice moments, which was enough to keep me thinking something's wrong, but we've got to get back to what we had. Yeah. So it was really complicated and terribly sad.
Yeah. So were you drinking like every night, blacking out, that kind of thing, or?
Yes. I don't think I was. Well, I'm always I almost always managed to get into bed, and then get up. But there was a few times when I actually did stay downstairs.
No, it's super interesting. Everybody's got their version of the same story, whether addiction is part of your life or not. But I would say 3 nights a week he didn't come to bed.
Oh, okay.
And certainly if we were going to watch a movie, he might be asleep before the credits were done. I used to joke and say I was married to a newborn. He would sleep for 20 minutes, be up for 10 minutes, sleep for a half hour. He was sort of in and out of presentness all the time when he was home. So he says, and I'm sorry to talk about you like you're not here. He says, I was doing my job and I was doing a good job in my job. And that's true. But he was doing a terrible job at home.
Yeah. No,
the price that we paid was his. He worked so hard to be present at work.
I like to think of it as, I must have worn myself out trying to be normal.
To hold yourself together.
Holding myself together. So.
Sure. That takes a lot of energy.
If anyone asks me, people have asked me all the time, what was your starting point? I don't know. It was kind of weirdly gradual.
Yeah.
And then it just
had him.
Had me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the danger of addiction, because you can't mark the spot where this is where it happens.
Yeah. And then I was in the denial, and then, then I...
Well, then you were in the need.
Yeah.
It moved quickly from I enjoy this, I enjoy more of this, to I need this. There was no question. He was drinking in the mornings by the time he stopped drinking. So it was a real problem.
That's for sure. I think your story is really important for people to hear, because people think alcoholic and they think DUIs, like you said. They think jail time. They think can't hold a job. They think falling down drunk. And a lot of people on alcohol and other stuff too just sort of exist. They keep everything somehow pulled together, but it's not a real authentic life at all. It's disabling. Even if you can kind of hold it together.
Yeah.
It's a great way to say it.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, that's really great. Now, Dayna, when you kind of realize, oh, this is not good, did you go into fix it mode? Did you try to fix him? Did you think about leaving?
Yes, to all of that. Because I did not understand alcoholism, I grew up in a really Candyland household. Nobody drank. I never saw anything like that. I just thought I could kind of shake it out of him, that I could find the right words. I mean, I'm a writer, I'm an actor. I thought I can say the right thing that will make him wake up and go, oh, this is a problem.
Yeah.
And you know, what you learn when you go through this process is, you can't save anybody else. I did not save Mazz Mary. I stayed around for Mazz Mary to save himself.
Oh, you did help.
But you had to ultimately make that decision. And Beth, you know that. You'd save your son if you could.
Oh God, I tried.
Yeah.
I've tried everything.
Yep.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
We wish we could just wave a wand or give you the words or one. I always just thought, if I just phrase it in a certain way, it will come. He'll be like, oh yeah, I never thought of that.
Yes.
But it never happens.
And so I tried every emotional ploy I could: crying, screaming, cajoling, pleading, threatening. I tried drinking with him some. I tried everything because I really did think that I could fix it. Like sometimes you'll see old movies where a woman is hysterical and a man will slap her in the face and that like brings her back to the present. I'm not advocating for abuse, but I'm saying I felt like I just needed to find the right slap that would make him wake up. Yep.
I totally can relate to that. If anyone knows of what that would be, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's called self-realization.
I think my body gave me my own slap.
Yeah, I don't know if you would call it lucked out, but your body said, hold on there, buddy. We're going to set you aside for a little bit and you can have some time to think about this. What happened with you?
So I think this is what happened, and I think these two things are connected. So I was walking into work, and this was a late January, and I slipped on the ice in the loading dock and whacked my head, and I protected most of my face with my hand, which swelled up like a balloon. One of my work colleagues drove me to work and phoned Dayna
to the emergency room.
And I got 10 stitches in my head, so I went home for that day. And then a couple of days after that, or like 4 or 5 days after that, I just got this nosebleed at work and I had to cancel my evening class. And I went home and it wouldn't stop bleeding. So it bled through dinner. Dayna went to bed. I went downstairs and I just kept bleeding. So at about 2 a.m, I actually went in and got Dayna out of bed and said, look, you need to take me to the emergency room. And I really had tried to clean up the batting because I was just bleeding everywhere. And apparently it was appalling. But Dayna took me in to the ER. I think it was it 3 a.m, something like that?
Middle of the night.
So they stopped my nosebleed. They cauterized my blood, and then I had a blood test, and they said, "Well, you're staying in here because there's something wrong with you." So they kept asking me all these questions over and over again, and I was in total denial. You know, how much do you drink? Yeah, 1 or 2 drinks. That's it. So finally, they said to me, "Well, here's the thing: you're either lying to us or you have leukemia."
Oh wow!
We need to do a bone biopsy, and I thought. Do the biopsy because nothing. I don't have a problem. So I let them do a bone biopsy on me. They were scheduling me to do a liver and a kidney biopsy, which they never did. And then I don't know what happened. I was put in a medically induced coma because I had a psychotic break.
This was over the course of 4 days.
Whoa.
Because I was in hospital for 3 days and I wasn't drinking, so I went into complete withdrawal.
Oh, yeah, because you didn't let them know. And that's not okay to do, to cut yourself off of alcohol right away.
Oh, but mercifully, I was in a hospital when this happened, so they put me in a medically induced coma, and then they woke me up 6 days later.
Wow.
And then I slowly started coming to my senses.
Yeah, it was shocking. They told me when they finally got him into that coma, they thought it would take 18 to 24 hours for the alcohol to leave his system. So he was in intensive care, and 24 hours after they first put him under, they started to bring him up, and he started to convulse. He wasn't having seizures, but he was convulsing. And so they put him back under, and they said, we'll try again in 24 hours. They did that for 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah,
oh
it
my
was
gosh, she
shocking.
must have been terrified.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I just want to add this because it doesn't get talked about enough. And it was above and beyond the fact that I felt like I was watching this man who I had been with for the great majority of my adult life die in front of me. And now I knew that it was alcoholism. Mm-hmm. I was overwhelmed with the idea of what this was all going to cost.
Oh,
I mean, we had health insurance, but I didn't have any idea if alcohol treatment, if this kind of hospital stay would be covered. And so things were so bad between us at this point that I really didn't have much of an emotional attachment to Mazz, but I was obsessed with fear that we were going to lose our house, that all the things that I had worked so hard for, that we had worked so hard for, were going to go away. And I knew that even if somehow he could get this figured out, if we had to declare medical bankruptcy and we lost our house, I knew there was no way I could get past that. I mean, I just could not have done that. And so that was a huge weight on my shoulders. And I think one thing that doesn't get talked about very often is just that the complexity of watching someone else go through this that you love.
Yes.
It's terrible. And I know I'm talking to someone who gets it. It's truly terrible in a way that I don't know what else is this bad.
It is really terrible. The helplessness.
Yeah.
And like you said, the worry about money. It's like on top of everything else, we have to go, well, fuck, how are we going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And we've been really lucky. Our insurance has paid for things, although the things have not helped. So what I would really love to do is, if he was willing, is to send him to a year-long treatment center that deals with adoption and attachment trauma, specifically attachment issues. But
there are places like that, Beth?
Yes. Yeah. They raise wild Mustangs. You know, it's like this awesome place.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't have $150,000.
Yeah.
And so why the money thing has to be wrapped all in it is just, it's infuriating. And sometimes when we've been at different psych hospitals and things, I see these kids, and ours was taken care of with our insurance company, but I guarantee you not everybody's was. And to see these parents worrying so much about their child and what are we going to do? How are we going to pay for this? Just, it's destabilizing in so many ways. And we've got to fix our healthcare system. It's ridiculous.
We absolutely do. And we've got to figure out how to think through alternative addiction rehab facilities as well. Certainly the one that Mazz went to, it was a very traditional facility and it worked for him, but it doesn't work for so many people.
I didn't know any of this. It was the local one that I went to. And with what you learn afterwards, you know, we had some guests in our show. One of them was a North Dakota state senator. He's one of the committees he's on is revamping the state mental hospital.
Oh, wow.
And there's this big thing about, do they keep it where it is or do they have smaller facilities throughout the state? And then we just got talking. I said, you know what helped me was the fact that I was in a treatment center in the town I lived and it made me feel better.
Well, yeah. And your wife could come visit you. And
I was 47 when I went into rehab. So apart from the 5 other people who were older than me there, it was full of kids. But, you know, they'd come from over the states. One of them came from, you know, like Utah or something.
Oh, wow.
Because little old Prairie St. John in Fargo, North Dakota actually had a good success rate.
Wow.
It was above 10%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's about what they are, isn't it? They just expect it to be a revolving door. Well, so you were one of the 10%. Good job. So you recovered at the hospital enough to go to rehab. You went straight from the hospital to rehab. Is that how yours worked?
Yep. On his 47th birthday, I drove him to rehab.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think we have to tell this story because it was such a profound moment. I had gotten incredibly sick and just, I think, from the stress of it all. And I went to pick him up from the hospital and the nurse made me put on a mask. And I remember at the time feeling like, wow, this is terrible. I mean, who could have anticipated that 3 years later, that would just become our regular life. But anyway, I picked him up. I was incredibly sick. We got to Prairie St. John. We were waiting to check him in. I fell asleep. They woke me up. We went in to check him in, and the woman asked him his date of birth, and he said 2/16/1970. And she said, well, that's today. And he said, yeah, what a way to turn 47, huh? And she said, but what a way to start your 48th year.
She was absolutely
nice.
right. Yeah.
It was That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and I remember sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, what if this is the start of something positive? It was just really an unbelievable moment.
Oh, and it ended up that way for you, which is great. It did turn into something positive.
It did.
Very good. Did they have some sort of magic trick at that rehab, or was it just the concoction of some therapy, some groups, some talking, some reflection, and being away from your regular routine?
Yeah, it was reflection. We had art every morning. We had hard. My counselor, bless her, she was amazing. She had to hand me my ass on a plate to me once, which helped because I was kind of, for about the first week, I was still sort of, yeah, I'm okay, I can fix myself.
Yeah.
So she brought Dayna in without telling me. So Dayna talked to my group and just laid it all out. And that day was my turning point.
Okay.
Because she gave me an assignment to do and I didn't do it. And then she screamed at me. And part of my brain was going, dude, what are you doing? You sound like one of your students. I think I may have actually said I didn't have time to do it.
Yeah.
Which she went, that's a lie. I was asked to leave the room. Dayna had a long conversation with me afterwards. And it was that moment. That's when I thought, you know what? I really do need help.
Okay.
And that's when it started for me.
Well, I'm glad that woman kind of did that to you, because that was kind of your wake up then, huh? Well,
yeah,
the medical situation probably, and then being forced to face the actual truth of what's going on. I think that a lot of parents of teens, their kids lie all the time. And I'm like, yep, they do. They lie because they do not want to disappoint you. They're lying to themselves.
Yeah. If
they're addicted, they're lying to, it's just like natural, just like comes out. And so to see that lying and that denial as a coping mechanism, it's not a sinful kind of naughtiness. It's a coping there. You're not even admitting it to yourself until you did.
That's so smart and so true, Beth. I think
one of the really hard things about living in and with addiction is just exactly what you said. The lying. I mean, Mazz would tell me lies that were so stupid that I would be incredulous that they would be coming out of this brilliant man's mouth.
They made sense to me at the time.
You start to doubt your own sanity because
the lies are so stupid. There's just, you can't believe this is your life.
Yeah.
My counselor, Joanne Spearing, bless her, she once said to me when I was in rehab, you know what, I don't want to hear from you ever again. She says, I don't want to hear the word but come out of your mouth in a sentence. And I can honestly say in 5 years, 6 months, 1 week and 4 days, I may have said the word but maybe twice.
That's not very many times. Good job.
I started listening to what I was saying to myself, and I had one of those, what are you doing moments. And in conjunction with we went to see a group therapist who actually said to me, he said, I know you're going to be okay, he said, because you're lucky, because you're a late-onset alcoholic.
Oh, you didn't start so young.
I had my successful teenage 20s where I didn't have an addiction. I could think about
who you had been,
who I had been and who I wanted to be again.
Yes, exactly. My son does not have that. And it terrifies me because he started when he was 12, we think. We didn't know it for a couple of years. So he does not remember that identity forming adolescence. He doesn't have that. And it's going to be extra hard for sure. You at least, you went through all the way through school and everything. You had all sorts of great memories and remembered life could be normal. And the longer people can hold off an addiction, if you have any sort of choice in the matter, better. If parents can help their kids avoid getting deep into the substances. I know it's so hard and kids want to experiment, but the longer they can put it off, the better.
Yeah. The thing was, like, we used to go to parties. We used to sit down and drink. And like three of us would drink, when I was 20, 21, three of us would sit down and drink a bottle of whiskey together. But then I wouldn't drink anything for weeks afterwards.
Right. It was like a one-time party thing. And then
I knew it was a drink, it was a special moment. And then, every now and then I'd go out and have a beer, really, honestly. And then I'd go weeks without drinking anything. And so how that flipped to me literally drinking a bottle of Jim Beam a day, I don't really know how that happened.
Wow. So Dayna, do you have any addictions as well? I know not alcohol, Candyland and all, but caffeine, or is there any addiction that you can somehow relate with Mazz about?
It's funny. I joke about this a lot on our show, but it's kind of no joke, but I also don't want to minimize real addiction. You know what special K bars are, Beth?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you kind of have to be from the Midwest to know what a special K bar is, but it's this peanut butter, corn syrup, cereal concoction with chocolate on top.
Got all the major food groups in it right there.
Yeah, sounds good.
I could eat a pan of those, make myself sick, come back and eat another pan of them. I have some kind of unnatural obsession with special K bars. I've never made them because I absolutely cannot. And so, no, I don't have any legitimate addiction, which I feel profoundly grateful for. But I think there's nobody who doesn't have something that becomes the thing that lives in their mind. You can't go to treatment for special K bars. Right, I don't need to go to treatment for special K bars because I manage it, but I understand feeling out of control about them.
Yeah, so you do understand his cravings and his
yes, in a very small way.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm blessed with too is when I woke up from my coma and started thinking about what I mostly wanted out of what I wanted out of life was to be me again and to stay married. I didn't swap one addiction for another.
That happens so often.
Everyone except for me in my rehab unit were chain-smoking cheap cigarettes, and my roommate was coming off meth, alcohol, and cannabis. So I don't know if you've ever been in a room of someone who's sweating out methadone, who's a chain smoker. That smell will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's bad. Well, congratulations for not grabbing something else. I know smoking is a really common one.
I had some associations about in my first year of not drinking, and Dayna was fantastic about this. So I got sober in February the 1st, 2017. That Christmas, we had our first log fire of the season, and Dayna said to me, "What do you miss, Mazzy?" Or she asked me quite legitimately if I miss drinking. I said, "You know what I miss right now? When we used to have a fire, we used to have a Bailey's or a Phoenix." So Dayna immediately went online and found the ingredients for non-alcoholic Phoenix and then made one, and it was fantastic.
Nice. Okay.
So, and then fun non-alcoholic drinks.
Whatever flavor that is. I was going to say about the special K bars that luckily special K bars aren't in every single commercial and every single sporting event and everywhere you go, every neighborhood bar. And, alcohol is just so prevalent in our culture. It's ridiculous.
And it's just a given that if you're going to a dinner party, you'll drink. If you're going to a sporting event, you'll drink. If you're going out to the theater, you'll drink. If you're it's just astonishing how expected it is, and also how kind of not okay it is to not drink. It is fine, but you have to decide to be fine with somebody. If you're a woman saying, "Well, what are you, pregnant?" or asking all these insane questions that A, are nobody's business, and B, absolutely. What's it to you?
There's two things I've noticed. One, big, well-established alcohol companies make high-end whiskeys sexy.
Oh, yes.
But I watch the English Premier League on the TV, and they are actually, in their adverts, they are really pushing non-alcoholic beer.
Oh.
And so
now, is that soccer?
Yeah.
What we would call soccer?
And so are the Grand Prix. Like the Australian Grand Prix this year, the advertising campaign was Melbourne, spelt with the 00 from Heineken Zero in the middle of it. And every placard that those race cars went by, all of them just said Heineken 00. Okay. So alcohol is in a lot of adverts, but they are actually trying to normalize
It's coming.
non-alcoholic beverages too.
It's such a minority of people that just don't drink for one reason or another. It's so strange. And alcohol is one of the most dangerous substances of all of it. I mean, people, heroin, okay, cocaine, alcohol, I think is worse. I mean, it causes so much damage and danger.
It would be really interesting to know in this, ongoing great debate of should we just legalize all drugs and see what happens? Because then you could monitor them and keep them safe and tax them and all those things. I mean, on one hand, I think, yes, we should, because the black market is so dangerous and people are lacing things and all of that. But on the other hand, if you look at the rise of alcoholism because it's so accessible, and it doesn't seem to matter that it's heavily taxed and all these things, it's scary to think about, well, would the rate of heroin addicts go through the roof if everybody could just literally go to a store and buy heroin? I don't know. Yeah. Is it as addictive as alcohol? I mean, there's just so many huge questions around it. But I think your point of it being among the most dangerous is really spot on. And my gosh, you only need to walk about 6 feet from any business district and you're in a liquor store.
Everywhere. And here in Southern California, every other store is a pot shop.
Oh, yes.
Because it's legal here. So that doesn't help. I mean, I'm very pro legalization, but my God, when you're a kid trying to quit and having pot shops everywhere, and good Lord, out here, they deliver it to you.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Probably long term, it will prove to be a good thing. But in the short term, for families trying to keep people clean, it's hard. I know.
Yeah. Now, have either or both of you worked on whatever was underneath all of that addictive behavior? Were you trying to stuff something down? Were you not dealing with some sort of trauma? Or was it just the alcohol got a hold of you?
I think it was just the alcohol got hold of me. I've been thinking about this for years. I can't really think of anything else.
It sounds like the way it happened to you, just kind of slowly, more and more and more, like it does. Wow. So when you quit drinking, went through rehab for how long? 30 days?
About, 4.5
30
weeks.
days. Yeah. Then was everything just smooth sailing after that? Or did you guys have to learn how to relate to each other anew? Or
I think we kind of had to. What do you think? I think we got off to a good start, but we had to kind of get back into it.
We certainly had things we needed to get through. And I think that's another thing that doesn't really get talked about is the actual addict has been through a program, might have treatment plans, might have 12-step programs they're going to, all those kinds of things. They've sort of developed a Rolodex of tips and tricks. And I had none of that. None.
They didn't give you any support? Oh, shoot.
No. So, I mean, I went to a few Al-Anon meetings during COVID. So 3.5 years into Mazz's sobriety. That really did not resonate for me. I really had nothing. So I felt like Mazz came home, and if it were a race, which it's not, but if it were a race, Mazz was way ahead of me because he'd already had 4 weeks of talking through, his shame and his guilt and his sadness and all that. And I had none of that.
I was going to AA meetings twice a week.
And I had to really figure out how to have him back home, how to manage my own insecurities around it, how to work through the trauma that I had really developed in the years that he was drinking.
Sure.
Because it is traumatic. I don't care if it isn't super abusive and all those things. It's traumatic to live with someone who's using a substance.
No matter what. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. So when we have kids that are in treatment, it's really kind of inferior, but they did try to have like parent support, family meetings, blah, blah, blah. So they didn't have anything like that for spouses, huh? Is there any sort of group out in the internet?
I'm sure that there are. In fact, it's interesting. Mazz and I both are doing some training with an online group called Ignited Recovery, IGNTD Recovery. And it's really a whole platform started by Dr. Adi Jaffe in Los Angeles to do addiction treatment rehab differently. So it's not about...
It's not AA or the 12 steps.
And it's not about absolutely stopping all substance abuse. It's
I love that.
Yeah.
It's moderation and reduction. A lot of them, their goal, the ultimate goal of it is to get people to be alcohol or drug free.
For a lot of people.
But being accountable and setting boundaries and keeping them and slowly coming back. And then the idea is, with AA, if you lapse or relapse, then you got to start again.
Yeah, you're all done. Yeah, you got to start all over, and people go, well, fuck it, I'm done.
Right.
I can't do this.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with that harm reduction model. All of us would love our loved ones to be sober for the rest of their lives, period.
Yeah.
But it's probably not going to happen. And why don't we just teach everyone how to be safer?
Yes.
And be in radical acceptance of whatever our loved one is going through and meet them where they're at. I love it. I'm going to go look that up right now.
This is one of the top key words for this entire program top 2 words is radical acceptance. You just said it yourself.
Yeah.
That's what they're geared towards.
So at any rate, I bring that up because I'm going to start working with families.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. It's just the same problem, but from the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just the person who's addicted that has the problem. It is a family issue. We say that all the time on our show. And you guys need support. Everybody needs support in different ways and together probably too. Yeah. So are you hanging up your shingle yet, Dayna? Or are you?
I'm just still early in the training. But the other thing that I think is true is you really need to know what part you played in it as a family member. I didn't shove alcohol down Mazz's throat, but I was a participant in some pieces of it intentionally and unintentionally.
Yeah.
And you have to reconcile with that, if for no other reason than the idea that if you don't, the power balance is way off, because you can sort of take the moral high road and say, well, I'm not the one who screwed all this up. That was you. Yeah. That's not true. If you want to find harmony and balance and a true relationship, you really have to be willing to hold the mirror up to yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Not that we caused it, but we can influence behaviors incredibly for the good or the bad. And it's a system that works together, and Joey, our son, was in a dysfunctional system before when he started using drugs, and the drugs, honestly, it fixed up a lot of stuff for him. It's like, okay, well, that worked for you, at least for a little bit. And then it kind of goes out of control. I think that's really smart to really look at everybody, not to blame or to keep score at all, but for everybody to work on themselves. I always say in the intro, I'm walking beside Joey and not wagging my finger at him at all. Just, we're all working on our own stuff.
Well, here's a couple of things I've noticed about AA. The 12 steps, the 12 promises. Only one of them is about not drinking. The other 11 are really good advice that everyone could pay attention to.
Everybody, yes. Yes, it's just personal growth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and people get stuck. They get stuck, with trauma or with denial or wanting to block difficult feelings. But if we can work through those without grabbing the substances, that is ideal.
Or without shaming someone. I mean, it's shame is an easy, low hanging fruit place to go when you're frustrated or mad or disappointed. And it just doesn't serve anybody. Nobody does better with shame.
And the best piece of advice I ever got was from my original counselor, a guy called Rod, who said to me, being sober is easy. You don't drink. Staying sober is hard. And if you remember that you can talk to people who will help you, you should be okay.
Yeah, getting that support, that's so critical. So have you stayed with the 12 steps, or have you found other programs like this one that you're involved in now?
I've actually just known AA, and then we're both doing the training. Yeah. I'm going to be an accountability coach. And,
nice.
And Dr. Jaffe's really interested in that because he wants me to come in as one of those, hey, AA worked for me, but let's talk about this and AA together. So there's a lot of fascinating stuff that's involved and ignited. There's a couple of things I'm going to have to get used to. When I talk to people and they start talking about, oh, I only had 3 drinks this week. What? And I've got to remember it's a reduction.
Yes, that's so not AA.
Oh, yeah, you lot are still drinking. Oh, yeah. So.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, AA works for a lot of people, and a lot of people it kind of causes more harm, and they need to find their own way. I'm very much about everybody finds their own way to recovery, whatever that looks like.
The interesting thing is, though, when we first met him, Dayna was horrified, and she said to me something on the lines of, so if you drank, would you have to give all your chips back and start again? I said, yeah, and that's why I'm afraid I don't want to be in that position. Dayna just thought, well, that's horrifying. How can you be like sober for 5 years and then go and get a 24-hour chip and start again?
It just feels so wrong. Adi's point is, if you get a 96 out of 100 on a test, nobody says, well, because you didn't get 100, you failed.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. And I get what he's coming at, but for me, for AA, that was. I mean, I'm very happy, and the phrase I use is and we say at the end of an AA meeting, I'm a happy, smiling alcoholic enjoying sobriety.
Yeah. And you don't want to mess with that.
No, and this is the happiest I've been, I think, well, maybe in my entire life, but it isn't for everyone. It doesn't work for everyone. Most of the people in Ignited have actually tried AA, and they're not the 10% where it works. Even fewer stay sober for any length of time. Yeah,
it sounds very realistic. And again, taking away any shame, which is awesome. And you know who introduced to us is Alex Kaplan, who's all about shame and getting rid of it with his of substance and his short films. So I love people that are working against shame. I think that's one of the worst parts of our culture right now is shame. And so we work really hard to destigmatize lots of stuff around here. So.
Yep.
And part of this Ignited thing is there's a whole section called F shame.
Oh, I love that.
That's really Adi's mantra. Yeah. He met Alex through Adi.
Oh, through Adi. Okay, very good. I'm going to have to look them up because I'm in LA. So is there anything that you would like to say that I never asked you about, or any last words?
I just guess I would put in a quick plug for our show on Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. We go live just to talk about some aspect. Tuesdays, it's just the two of us. And on Thursdays, we bring on a guest. But I think it's a really great way, particularly if you're somebody who is feeling isolated or like you're living with this secret and you don't have anywhere to turn. We're here talking about it, and we lived with it for a long time. So we know exactly where you're at. And we would just invite anybody who's looking for a little kind of quick dose to start the day to join us.
Yeah, because they're short, right?
Yeah, Tuesdays are 15 minutes.
And then Thursdays are usually longer because of the guest.
A nice 15-minute little dose. I love that. Daily dose. I'll definitely put your guys' link in the show notes so everyone can find that. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing. I think that's really important work you're doing. And thank you for sharing so openly and vulnerably to the world. And hopefully other people will take up your example and do it themselves.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's important to remember that, you're not alone. There's no shame in it.
Right.
Asking for help is a huge step forward, and you won't be alone if you ask for that help.
Yeah,
definitely. And not everybody has to make a podcast and blab it to the whole wide world, but
no,
that's true. Yeah.
You can talk to someone quietly. And probably won't say a word.
You don't have to live stream anything you don't care to.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, thanks for having us on and for the work that you're doing.
Yes, best of luck with everything.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to you too. And everyone who's listening, please share this episode with someone that you know that might be struggling with addiction or might have a family member that's struggling, and see if you could share this with them and give them some hope and some illumination around shame and addiction and that kind of thing. And go ahead and find Safe Home Podcast on all the social media outlets. We put our podcast on the podcast apps and on YouTube because some people like YouTube better. And we have a Patreon account if you'd like to support us with a small donation once a month at patreon.com/safehome. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to our 3 new Patreon members this week, Mar, Claudia Olguin, and Shelly Weber. Welcome and thank you so much for becoming Patreon members. So thank you again for being here. Thank you everyone for listening. And Mazz, Dayna, and I all want you to stay safe.